Bonsai for the absolute beginner. So what is a bonsai? If you look at the definition of bonsai, it's to grow a plant in a tray or a pot, if you wanted to make it a simpler definition, but more accurately in a tray. So the idea of the bonsai in its most basic element of principle, so get a little bit less scared of the idea if you're actually interested and want to get started, it's to restrict a plant that would normally grow to a full size into a smaller size. That's the basics. So you get a great big tree, you grow it in a pot instead. That's the very, very, very bare bones, basic, simplest version of a bonsai. Although a purist would definitely not define it as such. If you want to get interested in the idea and start experimenting, that's the first way to start looking at it and stop being terrified of the idea. It then composes of a few other factors. Now, one of those factors of which we are more familiar is the shaping element. Now, here's an example of shaping. Now, this is where I've woven 4 different plants together to basically get that nice woven shape. Now, this does not make it a bonsai, but it is one of the elements that is in bonsai. What you will actually see more regularly than obviously that is, you know, where it's bent and sort of curves and things like that. You know, that sort of shaped, you know, some people who are less, you know, kind about it will say tortured look. It's not. It's more, it's training the plant into an appearance or a shape. You're also trying to duplicate the look of a larger plant. So that's the next step, you know, that you start looking at. And of course there's the other elements where you actually grow the plant so that it's got a thicker trunk. You actually cut it, grow more, and, you know, work that way. Now, I've got another example which I'll follow up with, a plant that I actually cut a few weeks ago. So I'll show you my before and my after. Now, the next step with my after will be to actually start shaping as well, and also allowing it to grow a bit more to get something out of it. So, bonsaiing. This is something that's fascinated me for some time, but obviously it's a rather complicated process. But not necessarily as complicated as you would otherwise think. So this one here I've been growing for a while, and I've just recently realised I've got a couple of little branches starting to come out here. So this one was originally going to be a bonsai, and I basically just left it alone. And as I've discovered, there's 2 different tactics with your bonsai in essence. One is to basically train it from birth, so you get all of the shapes happening. And the other then is if you get an older plant, it's basically to train what grows off it. So basically I'm at the train what comes off it sort of point with this one, because there's not really much in the way of flexibility left in the trunk there. So the idea that I've got, so what I'm going to do is basically cut off here, so that basically becomes the new top, and then I'm going to repot it as well, so that it's in a nice, good, rich soil to help encourage the extra growth. And then I'll basically over time just work on training these branches, and with any luck I'll end up getting some on the other side as well, and we'll see how we go from there. So this one is, you know, it's basically just a bit of an experiment to see what I can actually achieve with it. The mulberry that I showed you that I wove together in my mulberry video, that's the shaping side of things. That one I'm definitely going to be leaving for a while before I actually do anything extra with that. So we'll see how we go. Okay, so don't know if these are going to be strong enough for the job, but I'll get something else if I can't. I'm just going to try and get a nice clean cut, but I want to avoid killing that other branch at the same time. So if I can just wriggle that up, there we go. All right. So what I'm going to do as well, basically I'll put some cinnamon on there to help sort of help seal the wound and keep bacteria away until that heals over. But given how successful I have been in the past with cuttings, I'm going to stick that in the dirt as well with a bit of rooting hormone and see whether or not that can actually survive and reroot itself. To give it a bit of extra chance, I'll strip off a few of those leaves so it's not using as much energy there. And yeah, we'll see how we go. I'll keep you posted. So here's the jacaranda now, just one day after doing the cut. It's grown a lot faster than I expected. So I've stuck the main trunk in as well in the hope that it roots, and I knocked the top off by accident, so I've stuck that in there and see whether or not that actually manages to make it. See how we go. So 3 days in, got home tonight. You can almost see this thing actually growing. This is insane. So this is about 3 weeks on now. As you can see, the amount of growth we've got back out of this. That was our original right there. Get in, you can see all of the additional growth that's happening there now. So we can get in there so you can get a better view. It's quite a bit of shadow in there, but you can see the plant is growing a lot now. Now with this, I can start shaping this part around to get that better shape happening, allow the rest of it to start growing and start working on basically making a prettier plant that I can restrict the size of. Now also, this is all new growth that's coming back on that other plant as well. On the rest of it, that's the part that I cut off. Now I'm going to be able to do more with that as well. So I'm hoping that this has been able to help demystify the idea of bonsai a little bit for you and make it seem a little bit less scary, so that you can now, rather than be too terrified to do anything with it, that you can actually step out and start having a bit of an experiment and play around with it. So what we've essentially learned from this is that bonsai, it's way more complicated and in depth than what I've gone through, but in its basic levels, it's an art form of restricting a growth of a larger plant and making a shaping and making something that looks like a larger plant in a smaller size. There are several different ways of doing it. There's lots and lots involved in it. Those little tiny bonsais that you see that look like a seedling in a bonsai pot, those are a seedling in a bonsai pot. They're not actually a bonsai. If you know what you're doing, you spend the time on it, you can make a proper bonsai out of it, absolutely. But it's a bit of a misconception, and it really throws that whole idea off for people who are interested and have got no idea. So your best bet, if you're interested, get a plant, let it get some growth on it. While it's got movement in its trunk, get some wire and shape it. Start playing around a little bit. Once it gets to that sort of thickness of trunk and some size in there, then you can start looking at potentially cutting it back and doing the other bits and pieces. Don't get too panicky about it while it's little. Yes, you can do it from a seedling and actually go from that point, but if you're a beginner, it's probably a lot harder unless you allow it to get some growth first, good root structure, so that it can actually survive and bounce back from any mistakes you make along the way. All right, hopefully that's given you a bit of a helping hand to just get yourself started and demystify it and take a bit of the terror out of the idea for you. And thanks very much. I'll catch you next time.